Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Ben Ogilvy. I'm one of the co-organizers of the Accessibility NYC Meetup. And shout out to our other co-organizers who are all coincidentally remote today. But Thomas Logan, Cameron Cundiff, and Merrill Evans, who is helping on the live stream and managing questions from folks who are attending online. Also, massive thanks to Aaron Mendez, who may be listening on live stream right now, but who answered the last minute bat signal to come help out and help with setup and man the lobby today. Really appreciate the help there. We live stream all of our events on YouTube, including this one. So if you can't make it in person, you can also join online. Thank you to Jelly McPhee from the Internet Society of New York's Accessibility Special Interest Group for broadcasting the event. We also human caption all of our events. No auto captions here. Thank you to Lydia Oxenrider for captioning today, and Ira's Flip Wilson for ASL interpretation. If you are using the Ira Explorer for Ira Explorer app for visual interpretation, the A11yNYC geofence should apply automatically. And I think you can also use an A11yNYC offer code, if I recall correctly. Merrill will be, again, fielding questions on YouTube, which is youtube.com/A11yNYC. So feel free to join the chat. And we will have time for questions at the end. Also, just unofficially, after the event tonight is also the opening night for the Real Abilities Film Festival, which, if you were here last year, they came and spoke about authentic representation in film. Really cool film festival will be happening for the next, I think, 5 or 6 days. So I'm going to be heading up to kind of Midtown area and catching an after-event drink after their opening night stuff. If anybody's interested, tag along. Want to thank our sponsors. Ira, which is an app that connects people who are blind or low vision to professional visual interpreters for secure access to visual information anytime, anywhere. ACCREDITATION, global digital design and innovation agency for providing the space that we're using tonight. DQ, leader in digital accessibility tools, services, and training. Equal Entry, digital accessibility consultancy focused on results. Evinced, software for accessible development. And Fable, an accessibility platform powered by people with disabilities. You can also get the captions either on the YouTube live stream or if you need them in the room. They're on the screen, and also at streamtext.net /player !event equals A11yNYC. Let's see, what am I forgetting? We talked about sponsors. We talked about all the awesome people that help. So today, Jeremy Rivera is going to be giving a talk. Jeremy's developer advocate for DQ Systems. He's a full stack software engineer contributing to numerous open source projects with a preference for JavaScript and Python technologies. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us today. Take it away.
So, start here. We're good on sound? A little bit more? Okay. You guys could hear pretty good? All right, nice. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for being here. And I could minimize Zoom. So thank you for coming. This is Tools of the Trade, accessibility without the cost. Super humbled to be here, and I appreciate all who could make it in person, and then those who are tuning in the live stream and are catching the recording. So before we get into the talk, I did want to give you all a brief introduction to myself. So this slide contains 2 images. One of them is a picture of my 2 dogs, a black lab and a brown beagle. Both are wearing sweaters and looking into the camera. And the second image is a profile of myself, shaven, smiling with my arms crossed. If you're catching the recording, I do have facial hair today. But I'm a developer advocate at DQ, and all that means is that I'm a software developer that tries to spend a lot of time with the community such as events like this, and also give them resources to help them code accessibly or give them the tools to help them do their jobs easier. I also try to convey their feedback, whether candid or not, with those in my company. I studied software engineering and communications while I attended the University of South Florida in Tampa. And while I didn't study ASL, I know ASL. I had been with the deaf community for quite a bit, so I'm very happy to sign with people. And then, as I stated in the image description, I am a dog dad of 2 doggies. Milo, which is pronounced Milo. I tell people that and they still say Milo. And he is the beagle and Luna is the lab. I'm also happy to share that I was just recently awarded a CPAC certification after testing. That was a nice first step for the community, right? Okay, so on this slide, there is an image of a large red toolbox centered within the frame. Now that we've gotten the introduction out of the way, I wanted to begin with a question. As developers and accessibility professionals, what's in our accessibility toolbox? Now, this is a personal question, and we all have a very different answer. For other trades and professions, you could probably guess the tools that they use. If you could think of a carpenter, they probably use a lathe, a saw, a mallet, a square, a number of chisels. A painter may need to sketch out their image with a pencil on a canvas before they come back with varying brushes and varying different types of paint. Each trade has its tools, and accessible development is no different. For developers, designers, and engineers, we use tools every day such as our keyboards, screen readers, and integrated developer environments, or IDEs, such as VS Code. Like any other profession, we are tradespeople, skilled professionals in a very specialized craft. Our trades rely on different tools for different skill sets and variations depending on the focus of our teams. Our focus today, obviously, it's those tools regarding how to make accessible development easier, the tools available for free to build inclusive experiences for all. Like any industry, specialized work often comes with high prices, but the tools don't always have to. The tools I'll be exploring today could help you get started building accessibly, even if your team's budget isn't there right now. There are many teams that haven't gotten the buy-in yet from their stakeholders, but that doesn't mean you can't get started, and that shouldn't stop you from trying. Accessibility without the cost does not imply low quality. So today's toolbox, today's agenda, we're going to discuss tooling available for 3 stages of development. Namely, when we're writing the code, when we're testing it locally, and when we're reviewing a PR. And again, on this slide, there is a figure that reiterates the simplified SDLC, a software development lifecycle, that was discussed in the last slide. Namely, first beginning with writing clean, accessible code. Second, testing locally on Chromium-based browsers. And then third, we're going to briefly discuss PRs, reviewing, and then what happens post-commit. I wanted to re-emphasize these steps because accessibility issues can be and often do get introduced during each stage of the development. So each stage creates a unique and good opportunity to continuously check and test for accessibility issues. So we're going to start within our IDE, again, integrated coding environment. Typically, all the code we write as developers is written within an IDE. Simply put, this is the tool we probably use each and every day if we are engineers or developers. And since using an IDE is crucial, it is super important to incorporate accessibility best practices as early as we can, even while we're writing the code. So here we have a figure that goes into why we're starting with development early in the life cycle. The graph's legend shows the cost in the y-axis and the phase of development on the x-axis. There are 4 phases, namely design with the cost of 1x, development with the cost of 5x, QA testing, which is a cost of 15x, and then post-production has a cost of 30x. So what this illustrates is the necessity of incorporating best practices from the start. And as it shows, it should start with the design phase, but once it's handed off to developers, it's our responsibility to maintain it. If we don't, as the graph shows, fixing it later introduces even more accessibility defects and is quite costly when you consider post-production. Each step of the process continues to increase dramatically, and according to a white paper released by IBM, the costs of discovering defects after release are significant, up to 30 times more than if you catch them in the design and the architectural phase. Because this talk is about free tooling, we need to start with the mindset of trying to save money. So we have to shift left in our SDLC and bring these best practices again early when we're developing, because once it's pushed to production, you subject yourselves to lawsuits, you subject yourselves to bad PR, with people discovering that you have shipped inaccessible code or an accessible product. So if you fix them early, no one has to deal with that process. Again, accessibility doesn't have to be expensive when it's done correctly and done early enough, but it often is because it's typically later in the game that people start. So since some teams don't have a huge ally budget at the moment, we have to be scrappy with the available tools on the market. So start with the linter. So because I'm mostly familiar with VS Code, any images or descriptions that I present are going to be from VS Code. I will focus on the tools here. So on the screen you have ESLint and then also the axe logo. And even though I mentioned that I'm most familiar with VS Code, both of these could be used in other IDEs. So the ESLint plugin that I will discuss could be used in just about any terminal if you're rendering JavaScript. And then the axe development linter could also be incorporated in IntelliJ if you use something like JetBrains is the name. So it's relatively IDE agnostic. So starting with the linter. What is a linter? If you've ever grabbed a ball of dust from your pocket after drying it, you've probably encountered lint before. So similarly, in a code repository, there are times in which the code rewrite might not be best practice and might have a little dirt in it. So in that regard, in programming, a linter is a tool that analyzes your code as you watch it. It checks for errors, inconsistencies, and violations to something like WCAG, so predefined rule, and it could help format, help you with syntax, and in this case, accessibility. So if you think of it like a spell checker for your code, it helps you figure out what happens as you write the code. So what accessibility linters are available? So the first one we're going to be discussing is the ESLint plugin JSX Ally, and even though that's a bit of a tongue twister, you could see the page from the NPM registry that I put here, and it says that there is a static AST checker for accessibility rules on JSX elements. I know that's a lot, but it also states, if you move further down the page, that this plugin does a static evaluation of the JSX to spot accessibility issues in React-based apps. Because it only catches errors in static code, use it in combination with Axe Core React to test the accessibility of the rendered DOM. Consider these tools as just one step of a larger accessibility testing process, and always test your apps with assistive technology. Again, I want to point that out. We're going to revisit this. But it's designed for React-based environments, so think Next.js, Gatsby, Solid.js, Vanilla React. And it highlights, again, the rules, WCAG violations such as missing alt tags, the order of certain elements, keyboard traps that might come into play. And as mentioned earlier, it's pretty agnostic. You could use it with VS Code, IntelliJ. If you're bold, you could use it with Vim. So some of the rules it enforces, as mentioned, alt text. So we need a text alternative for any image elements. This is super important. And ARIA rules enforce that elements with ARIA rules have a valid, non-abstract role. and then something like anchor has content. So that's a very specific rule and enforces all anchors contain accessible content. So this is here within a code repository, again, within a VS Code IDE, and what is being displayed on the screen is a specific image component that has an error because an alt tag is missing. This is a Next.js application, and a little fun fact about Next.js is that they built this plugin within their framework and within their platform. So you don't need to download it in addition to the framework. Not all frameworks are like that, so often you will have to download it in addition, but Next.js does a really good job here. So what you could see within that Next.js component, the image, that there's a red squiggly line. And that red squiggly line will tell you and yell at you when you do something wrong. So again, as mentioned, there is no alt tag. And one solution that you will need if you aren't using Next.js is it will give you the error within the IDE, but once you start trying to test locally within the browser, you won't receive an error. So you have to use it in conjunction with something like Axe for React or another tool. Again, Next.js team does a fantastic job because they built that into it. So if you're testing that application within the browser, and I believe it happens with Gatsby as well, they will have that browser-based support that won't be readily apparent if you use vanilla React. Alternatives. So another alternative linter is the Axe Accessibility linter, which you could download via the VS Store extension. You'd also get it, again, on IntelliJ and other IDEs. So what makes this different than the previous one? Well, first, it's built with Axe developer tools, so those errors will be apparent on the browser. And then two, it has pre-built support for other libraries, so other component libraries, UI libraries. So Google's Material UI, a lot of people use that to try to save time building certain applications. It has pre-built support for that. React Native, that's also a super popular one. There's pre-built support for that. So if you use it, you could create reusable components, and the Axe Accessibility linter already knows how to gauge them. And then if you create your own component library, you could map it to specific rules so that it could also learn how to read that library as well. So an example of something that might get picked up from one of these component libraries is the MUI button, which is it's within a tag. It'll already know that that button should automatically have keyboard accessibility built into it, like a native HTML button would as well. So here is a still image, again, within the IDE VS Code, and this is a TypeScript application. You see an error coming under an image tag, a normal HTML image tag, and there is a long red squiggly under it. What you get back is a little bit less verbose than the ESLint plugin JSX Ally, but in a good way. It shows you exactly where the problem is. And the other one, it showed a little bit more in terms of typing, because we were using a TypeScript application, but this one kind of goes straight to the point. It states that the Axe linter, the errors under the image alt tag, you need to ensure that the image elements have alternative text or a role of none or presentation. There's also a link to DQ University, so you could see what the problem is, how to fix the problem, what rules it breaks, what laws it breaks, and then more information such as the disabilities that are affected with the specific error at hand, and the specific WCAG standard it breaks, and it's pretty cool. What you can also see is on the bottom of the image in the terminal, on the problems tab of the terminal, it also inputs the error. So that's very useful, again, because you have a couple points of contact for that error, but it's also useful if you level up, if you have it within VS Code and you get an API key, and there's a trial for that, so we won't focus too much on that. You could use it with GitHub Actions, so if you have a commit or a pull request. They could immediately block a pull request if the code is accessible and you write those things. But again, as we're focusing on mainly free tools, we won't go too much into that. It could also, with the API, integrate with something like SonarQube or Jenkins, like a CI/CD pipeline. So after we've hopefully written accessible code, we're still kind of writing the code, but your application is kind of developing its shape. You want to test locally in the browser. Many developers have their IDE either on one monitor or half their screen, and then a browser on the other side of the screen so that they could do it at the same time and they get hot refreshing and reloading so everything is integrated. So on the screen, other than the Google Chrome logo, the other logos featured are Google's own Lighthouse, WebAIM's Wave tool, and the Axe DevTools browser extension logo. The browser tools help you catch common accessibility issues, again, such as alt text, the structure of heading elements. So if you go from an H1 to an H4 or an H1 within two H2s, again, sometimes you see that. Low color contrast between text and backgrounds, missing labels on form fields or buttons, elements that aren't keyboard accessible, lack of proper ARIA documentation, and then responsiveness issues depending on how you're using the browser. We want to talk about Google Lighthouse first. Lighthouse is a free open source tool created by Google that analyzes web pages to help improve their overall quality. It can be run on any site, whether it's public or requires authentication. So think internet sites, think private sites. And audits for key areas other than accessibility, such as performance, ally stuff, SEO even, and then progressive web app features. You could run Lighthouse within Chrome DevTools. I believe they have it for Firefox as well. You could run it in the command line. You could run it as a node module if you're skilled at handling dependencies. And then to use it, you just enter a URL, and Lighthouse runs a series of audits, generating detailed reports that include score recommendations. And then for any failed audits, it provides explanations, such as some of the other tools, on why that issue matters and how to fix it. So on the next slide, we have an image of something you would see after running an audit with Lighthouse. You see 4 little circular graphs for performance, accessibility, best practices, and SEO. And you see performance has a score of 97, accessibility has a score of 74, best practices 93, and SEO 73 respectively. Performance measures how fast your page loads and becomes interactive. It includes metrics like first contentful paint, which is how quickly something shows up, time to interactive, how soon a page responds to user inputs, largest contentful paint, which is loading of main content on the website. The second is accessibility. And as you see, that's probably one of the lowest ones here, but it presumably checks how the site is for users with disabilities. And again, examples of what it might look for is the missing alt text, right? We need to make sure that our web pages have alt text for every image. Color contrast issues, proper use of ARIA, keyboard navigation. You have to make sure that the sites that you make are inclusive and able to be used by everybody. Best practices is a little bit different. It audits for modern web development standards, right? So it ensures your site is using HTTPS, which if it's online, it probably should be. It's free of deprecated APIs, which is not uncommon in today's day and age of fast updates. It tries to test to make sure you're avoiding common JavaScript vulnerabilities, efficient in resource use, and trying to keep your site secure, reliable, and maintainable. SEO. It evaluates how well your site is optimized for search engines. So what it tries to look for is the proper use of meta tags, making sure that the links are crawlable and the text is also crawlable. Is it responsive on mobile? Is it friendly to you? Do you have a descriptive page title? And then also after that, it will try to give you and try to help you out in the right direction to make your site more searchable. the when to use Lighthouse. So Lighthouse is really good for a quick audit. Its audit is in multiple areas, so it's quite comprehensive in the 4 that were just mentioned. Probably use it in early development before you commit. Again, you want a quick test to see where your site lies. You perhaps might use it as a QA for code reviews. And if you want that visual score, again, this visual circular graphs, those are pretty cool too. The next tool we will consider is the WebAIM Wave browser extension. And this browser extension can be downloaded on most of the major ones, such as Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. And it's a free, powerful tool to also help identify accessibility issues. So let's see how it differs briefly from Lighthouse. As you see on the left side, there is the console, and on the right side, it is the page that you just tested. Immediately, you could see the difference because how it generates the report, it shows you your web page, but it shows you little insignias next to the different artifacts on your page. So it'll show you the little arrows, and part of the legend on the left-hand side within the console are the specific areas. So it's very visual. That's the most striking example, is that you get that immediate visual feedback. So Wave overlays those icons right on the page so you can kind of focus on those areas. They boast that it's 100% local and secure, so it runs entirely within your machine's browser. It does not send data back to its server. So again, kind of like Lighthouse, you could use it to test intranet pages. You could use it for password protected content or dynamic asynchronous JavaScript rendered pages. So because it's visual, some people might like it, and so it might be more user-friendly to those that have the ability to look at those emblems. But it is also able to be used with keyboard shortcuts, which is really nice. So you could open the tool with Control-Shift-U for Windows users and Command-Shift-U for our users on Mac. So it's a fast, private way to flag issues on several different types of browsers. So the third in line of developer tools is Axe Developer Tools. So some of the key features and differentiators of this tool is, first, again, it's free to use. You could also use it on Chrome, Firefox, and Edge, just like Wave. And then it's also designed to help developers, designers, testers, whoever's going to make those checks. It's designed for them in mind. It runs automated accessibility checks on any web page. It surfaces many of the most common, as mentioned, alt, aria, the different ordering of elements, and it shows where it occurred on the DOM, guidance on how to fix it, and very similar to the linter that we spoke about previously, it'll have the little link to DQ University where you could look at what disabilities are affected, how to fix it, what rules it breaks, and so on. This is useful because it helps catch those issues early. It's designed for 0 false positives, focusing only on issues it can confirm with high confidence. If somehow there is a false positive caught, it gets submitted as a report, like a bug, and we treat it as a bug, and then we try to fix that. So it doesn't require deep accessibility expertise to start using it, but we always recommend to grow in that expertise, to grow, continue to learn. So we have this on screen, but I do believe we are going to do a demo. So, yep, we're ready for that. Let me see. And then, do I stop sharing?
No, you can just drop your, you can just drop your browser window over to.
Okay, magic.
Yeah, should be able to, yep, there you go.
Okay, so this is going to be fun. Okay, so we have the same site that was tested through both of the other DevTools. And to open the DevTools, we could Command Option I or right-click with your mouse. Go to Axe DevTools. I made sure I'm not signed in, so no pro features are going to be showcased. You run a full page scan. and immediately 41 issues pop up. So you have total issues such as ARIA, the roles, elements must meet minimum color contrast ratio thresholds, alternative text, links have discernible text. You have within the DOM the location of the element in question, a recommendation on how to fix it, and also more information on that DQ University page. Another cool thing is it shows you where that element is. So we know it's highlighted in pink, so the element in concern is one of the footer elements, and it says language on it. And you could also go into code. So once you know that there is a color contrast issue, if I change that color and I change it to black and I go back and I rerun the scan, we have 39 issues. So that issue is fixed in real time. So that is it with the demo, a very brief demo. Again, if you want to save tests or share it with other people, there are pro features to use, but it's really cool to see because it also shows you the laws. So if you're operating in the United States or Europe, you have all of the laws that need to be fixed and what the impact is if you don't fix it. Okay, so that's where the demo was. And I have a slide to explain to use the tools as intended. This is really important, and I'm going to mostly read it just so we all get it. Automated tools are important, and they catch a lot, but not everything. You can't catch everything yet with an automated tool. False positives, again, with ACCREDITATION, we have a dedication to 0, but either with ACCREDITATION or with other tools, they can happen, and they do happen, right? You have to be humble with that. So without the best tools, and even with the best tools, false positives may or may not happen. And then even if errors don't show up, that doesn't necessarily mean that the website's immediately accessible, just because you have 0 errors. So to build truly accessible experiences, you should and would pair it with manual audits from accessibility experts. And again, if you are an accessibility expert, that doesn't mean you can't use the tool. You should use the tool, but if you have the ability, use it with those experts. And then you need feedback from users with disabilities, and we have to see this more. Users with disabilities that use screen readers on the daily. You could use a screen reader yourself, and that's great. You should learn how to use one. But how does your website give that feedback if that's not your bread and butter, right? So you need screen reader users. You need keyboard-only users. You should have a comprehensive testing if you can. And if you have a friend, maybe someone isn't your coworker, have your friend help you out, right? Someone that you know uses these technologies because that's who you're catering to. And again, to reiterate, accessibility is and always has been a people-first practice. It's not just a checklist of things to check off. You need to make sure it's usable by actual people. And so you should incorporate those people early in the testing practice. Super important to reiterate. So now that we have reiterated that, to recap, we've talked about the tools for writing code. We've talked about some of the tools to have local tests within a Chromium-based environment. And I will briefly verbally consider reviewing pull requests, because that's where we start to delve into paid stuff, and I promise to focus on the free stuff. And so a couple of these. So the logos here represent one of Wave's offerings, and then also Axe DevTools Developer Hub. So these are the final tools, and they fit into this last box, namely reviewing pull requests, post commits. And what happens with these, they could integrate via APIs into a greater CI/CD process. And I wanted to save these last because when you're starting to consider pro plans and getting more out of automation, these are probably going to come up through Google searches and everything. DevHub could track accessibility across your entire code repository. You can monitor Git commits, different regressions. There's a GitHub integration, and you could block PRs with new issues. You could track trends over time, and it makes results very easy to share across teams. And that's something you're going to come back to when it talks about pricing. It's typically collaboration, overall automation, greater scale. The Wave API automates page level checks within your CI/CD pipeline as well. You could submit URLs. It could return JSON/XML data. You could start with 100 free scans. That's what they promise. And then afterward, it becomes pennies, right? But you typically will buy it in bulk, and then the price expands from there. The Axe Developer Hub API, you could create an account, enter your email, make an account. You get an API key. The API key is good. You could use that. That doesn't expire. So you could continue to use it on a single site, doesn't expire, and then test it out. And then if you wanted to branch it off to different code repositories or different sites, then that's when you would have to invest a little bit more. So now I have a brief illustration. When might you start making that consideration versus free or paid? You need results tracked over time. So you want reporting, you want something to give back to your stakeholders, you want to see where you've been and where you want to go, you might want to use something like that. You want to scale across teams, you want to share those results, you want to share the data. I know Axe tools, they integrate with Jira, they have, again, JSON, XML, you want to share that, you could copy and paste the free stuff, and that's a great start. Might want to consider that. You want to integrate it with Jenkins or SonarQube. It's a consideration. And then, again, you want structured insights. But, again, we're promised to focus on the free stuff. So we have another illustration. When do you use a screwdriver? So the image on screen is a woman who is evidently using a screwdriver to screw into a circuit board. And she has another tool to hold it in place, but she's using it on a table, and she's really focused on what she's using the screwdriver for. So what else might you use a screwdriver for? You might use a screwdriver for something like a watch, something like a dresser, some small scale things, but a screwdriver is an indispensable tool that you probably have several of them in your house. Use your screwdrivers. The next image, when to use a drill. What would you use a drill for rather than a screwdriver? They do more or less the same thing. The drills are probably a little bit more expensive. They probably have a little heavier hit behind them, but they also might speed up your job. They might help you out a little bit in the future. So these are personal questions to consider. What tasks would you use a screwdriver for, and what tasks would you use a drill for? Would you build a house with a screwdriver? Could one person build a house with a screwdriver? Maybe. Will it take years versus months or weeks? Does a team need to use it? Right? These are all things to consider, and only you or your teams could answer that question. So next, we're going to wrap up a little bit. Again, a nice encouraging slide here. Free tools does not mean free of effort. So if you're using the free tools, there's still going to be a little bit of effort required. Choose the right tools for your role. Master a few. Don't go trying to master each of the different browser extensions. There's a lot of overlap between them. It might not be conducive to your time, so don't chase them all. Learn how your tools work, not just what they flag. Right? There are errors that will be given back from these tools, but what do the errors mean? What does alternative text for images mean, and why are they important? What is ARIA roles, and why do you need to know that, right? Understand WCAG. One, so you know why we have guidelines, and then so you see why WCAG is not a perfect solution. Understand what you're fixing and why it matters to people with disabilities. Most immediately, and I probably should have ordered this first, is get feedback from people with disabilities. Just because you have tools, you cannot replace lived experience. There are people every day who can't go on websites because they're inaccessible. So get their feedback. Incorporate ally and accessibility into your workflow today and not tomorrow. right? Now that we know that there are free tools available, anyone could go download a DevTools extension or something like that and use it tomorrow, right? There really is no excuse with the technology that we have today that we can't implement Ally earlier. And I found a little quote by Benjamin Franklin. It says, "The best investment is in the tools of one's own trade," right? So you could leave knowing that. So a great tradesperson will know the tools, know how to use them correctly, have a plan, and when they build the products, they're learning the guidelines, right? So your blueprint might be WCAG, your blueprint might be the design, implement it. Understand why WCAG is what it is, and then why it's also getting updated, because it is an imperfect principle, but it's a fantastic way to get started. You don't have to memorize it, but understand the different design patterns within it as well. And I leave you with this illustration. On the left-hand side, it is a small white watch, and on the right-hand side, it is a 2-story building with leopard print. I think the leopard print is arbitrary, but it's when to use the screw and when to use the drill, when to use paid tools versus when to use free tools. So free tools will get you started, but not always finished, but they're still available, and please, please, please use them. And paid tooling, they offer deeper insights, a little bit better collaboration with your team, and reporting that you could share with your stakeholders. And then here are some resources, and I believe the slides will be available on the website too. The slides have been made sure that they are accessible. But without further ado, we have Q&A now.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Awesome. And we do have about 10 or 12 minutes. So yeah, we'll start making the rounds, and I'll kind of go back and forth between questions from the room and questions from the live stream. So we'll start right here.
Jeremy, thanks for this talk. I was just curious as to how would you tailor the advice for someone who's non-technical, who doesn't know how to code, and would probably rely on an AI agent, because they would have a harder time to discern how to trust or follow these guidelines.
So someone using an AI agent, always corroborate that with the actual documentation, right? AI agents like ChatGPT, they could give you almost immediate feedback for accessibility, but please check, double check, triple check that feedback on the W3C and the WCAG website, because that will give you the actual guidelines instead of what is spewed out on ChatGPT.
Right. Hang on.
So I have 3 questions, and I'll try to make them brief. Okay, the first one is, it looked like 2 or all 3 of the tools you mentioned that are free have links to DQ. So I wonder, do you guys have partnerships? How does that work, that they have links to you? So that's 1. 2 is, you mentioned that it listed other countries, and I've done work with a lot of international countries, and I'm curious, is it just the EU and the UK and the US and Canada, or is it, Asia and other parts of the world, And number 3 is, of those 3, there's clearly some pros and cons. Can you tell us why you might recommend we start with one versus another, since I think you very smartly said, don't try to master them all, and they have a lot of overlap.
Yeah, I was about to say, no, I was going to answer.
True.
Yeah. So let me start with 3 first. 3, like she said, there is a bias. I invite you to try them all. I invite you to try them all. Not all of them have the laws given back to you. They should all be user-friendly. They should all be accessible to try. To go back to number 1, which was the
Partnerships.
Okay, the only ones with links back to DQ University are the Axe tools. So the linter, the Axe Developer Extension, and the Axe Developer Hub. And then the second one was the different laws. So the Axe extension will have the different laws, and I noticed one of them was the EN 301549. That is a European one. That will probably get more comprehensive when EAA gets enforced this year. But there are other tools in the catalog, such as Monitor, where you could choose the rules of the place you're at, whether that's WCAG 2.1, 2.0, AA, single A, and I'm sure that several of the other countries that you just mentioned, like the IOTA for Ontarians, you could play around with that too. So I don't know, again, because you said I am biased, I don't know what Google has, kind of a similar thing, or if Wave has that same explanation.
One other thing you might notice is that a number of the other tools in the space do use, as an optional rule set, they do use the Axe Core rules that DQ has open sourced. So you will find that some of the other tools in the space, both the free and paid tools, may use at least one of the rule sets that they will check is the DQ open source Axe Core rules. So you'll find DQ stuff that they've made available adopted fairly broadly as well. Hang on, I'm going to take one from the online and then I'll come back. Hang on. Okay, so this one I can answer. What level of WCAG does Axe DevTools extension measure against? 2.1, 2.2, and all levels, A, AA, AAA?
All of the above.
Yeah. Do you have rules for AAA? I thought they...
I know. I think AA is standard, but
Yeah.
I know when you get to, again, kind of the more comprehensive tooling, you can
You can
test
do
for
AAA. Okay. Another quick one. Sorry, maybe not quick. Are you aware of tools that work well with container-based content? Specifically thinking of Adobe Captivate HTML output, which acts more as a blob than a web page.
It depends what you're testing for. So one tool I did cut out of this talk was a Mac-based tool specifically created for color contrast testing, and you could use it as a color picker. I know if you're using, I guess, either Adobe InDesign or Photoshop, you could use that color picker, but that's a very specific tool for that very specific job. Other text-based stuff, I know most of the things that you're going to use have a built-in accessibility checker, which will do part of the job for it. Like, I know InDesign has one, I know Photoshop, EPUB stuff, they all have accessibility checkers. Another tool, I don't know off the top of my head.
If anybody in our brain trust in the room or on the live stream knows something specific for Adobe Captivate, feel free to chime in, or we can route an answer through the newsletter afterwards as a follow-up. If you send it to me, we can share that out as well, because I don't know either. Here, we'll do in room.
I'll answer the first bit. Well, not Adobe Captivate, but color contrast tools specifically. There are free tools out there that you can use for color contrast checks. It's not necessarily stuck to Adobe InDesign. There's a free tool that you can download and use as an app on Mac and on Windows, I think. I have a twofold question. One is you covered testing locally, but you didn't touch upon screen readers themselves, NVDA specifically. JAWS is very expensive. Let's not go there. JAWS and NVDA for Windows and VoiceOver for
VoiceOver,
Mac.
yeah.
VoiceOver for Mac. So where and when should we start incorporating screen reader testing as well? Because that's usually something that's taken over in large enterprises by separate teams. That's question one. Question two is regarding the linters. They work for static analysis, but Wave especially, does it work for dynamic renders for frameworks such as Next and Nest.js?
And I will say, unfortunately, I cannot answer the Wave question,
Okay.
just because of my knowledge base. But the other one was the...
Where and when would you start incorporating screen reader testing at the development side?
If you have the ability to, certainly post-commit, pre-production, before you hand it off to the QA, because the QA might also reiterate that with someone with disabilities. If you have the knowledge and the skill set, or even kind of the personal project time to learn that, I would recommend doing it yourself as well.
So the only reason I bring that up is because it tends to get very personal. Screen reader use especially.
Yeah.
So we don't do it because if we do it, it's our personal, and then we keep fighting. It's just strange.
Thank
Please.
you. Thanks for the talk. That was very good. That's like a segue. My question was also about screen readers versus like using the automated tools, because something like form of validation, everybody talks about it. So like you have to use a screen reader to do like the tabbing and things like that. Like, do we have automatic tools for that? Like, do Axe or others can detect the focus or whatever?
Yes. So this is a paid feature, so I will qualify that. So the Axe Developer Tools extension has what is called an IGT. If you sign in, you look at the IGT, it will tab through the site for you. And it will show you what elements do not have a proper tab index. And so that is one of the pro features. And again, you could use it, test it out for 2 weeks, give me the feedback, find me on LinkedIn, it's in one of the slides, and then see if you like it or not.
IGT is short for Intelligent Guided Testing, if that's new. Okay, I think I have some more online. PS Adobe Captivate is an e-learning development tool and not a design tool like Creative Suite stuff. It exports slides you create to be interacted with online in an LMS. So qualifier for the earlier Adobe Captivate question.
But you can create slides on it?
It exports learning content as slides is how I'm reading this. But it's not a design tool. It's an LMS.
It might be, depending on how the slides are converted. The work, again, I can't answer, so this is asterisk, is the workflow might be once it gets to InDesign or another tool, if it doesn't touch anything.
I think it's more akin to Adobe AEM or similar, where it's a content creation platform for producing learning content that gets published to the LMS. So it's not an interface design. I assume it's kind of more Canvas-y than HTML-y. But again, I'm also not speaking from a place of knowledge. So, okay, I had one more. How can developers, this might be related to a similar question that was asked in the room, but how can developers prioritize which tools to use when starting their accessibility journey?
Depends what you're using the most. If you're writing the code, start with the linter. Like, start with the linter. Again, you could use it on IntelliJ, VS Code. You could start with the accent thing. If you're writing React code and you're throwing it out there, everyone uses the one I mentioned, the ESLint JSX Ally plugin. I think I switched that. But use that. Use those. If you're coding in vanilla React, download a few of them, try it out. The ones I mentioned, I think, are best practice right now, which is why I mentioned them. Start with the linter, always start with the linter, and always start with an extension. I will say, if you don't want to download an extension, Google is just now starting to throw accessibility tree in the DevTools. So you could do that too. I have found it's kind of hard, but if you could read that DOM, and for some reason you don't want to download an extension, then that could be helpful.
Cool. We got about 2-3 minutes, so we'll do one more in the room, one more online, and then for those in the room, stick around. We can continue the conversation after we end the live stream as well.
Great, thank you. So my question is, you mentioned that AxDev would not capture all of the issues, right? Is there a site where you might list some of the things that will require manual testing? Like, I'm sure it might be like a long list, but is there anything? I know that would probably be covered in Pro, but if there's anything, especially like, let's say maybe a freelancer who's like doing testing that can access some sort of a list.
I'll say actually Dylan
Barrel?
Dylan Barrel's book, Agile Accessibility. He has a table in the back of the book. And that's you can get it as a free ebook from DQ's site. And this is not meant to be like a DQ, but just I happen to know that he does have a table in the back of the book that covers all the WCAG guidelines. It was through 2.1. I don't know if he's updated it for 2.2 yet, but I think he covers can be automated, can't be automated. And there's also a website that I'm blanking on right now, but I think it's A11yAutomation.com or something like that. Remind me or find me, shoot me a note, and I can find that. And it actually covers these are the ones that are currently covered under automation. These are the ones that require manual testing. There's nuance to it, but it's a useful place to start. I don't know if you have another idea or resource.
So I know right now, I don't know the math, so I can't give it to you, but automation has been a work in progress for a little bit. If you were in the industry 15 years ago, you had to manually find the color contrast and manually do the math and try to figure that out. So I know with Axe, the free version will boast up to 57%.
Of common issues.
Of
It's
common
not
issues.
of WCAG,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
of commonly
common
encountered issues.
and stuff. But like he said, the ebook is free online. And it's a very short book. You just rush to the back if you want it. It's a cute book. It has a little ballerina on the front.
Let's see. Okay. I don't see any more questions coming in from online. So any other in-room questions? Otherwise, we can call it an evening. All right. So let me find my notes. The other thing quickly is we do want to create space for sharing opportunities in the accessibility field. So if anyone here is currently hiring for a paid accessibility role, I'd love to give a quick moment to share that if anybody has anything. If not, no worries, but want to just create that space and share some opportunities. Hang on just a second. Coming back.
Hey, Jesse Gardner from New York State's Office of Information Technology Services, and we are building out a central accessibility team for the state. We are especially looking for junior level accessibility people who can do manual tests. We have a lot of agency websites and applications, and so looking for people who can help do that. So we're also hiring at senior level positions as well, but we have a special need for that junior level. So if you're interested, come talk to me.
Awesome. Thanks. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just shared on the screen. There's a coworker. He just shared a position in GitLab for a senior accessibility engineer, and it's a little bit more senior, but in the network, they typically will repost job postings of the community as well.
Cool. And that looks like it's America's Remote or EMEA. Cool.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you to Jeremy. Again, thanks to Jeremy for a great talk. Thank you to everybody who attended, both in person and online. We have the best meetup group in the world, I think. Our community is amazing. So thank you to all of you. Thank you. Here, let's switch back to. Is that where we are? Yeah. Okay. Thanks again to our sponsors: IRA, ACCREDITATION, Evinced, Equal Entry, Fable, and of course DQ. And thank you again to everybody who works behind the scenes to make this happen. Jolie, Flip, Lydia. Thanks to all the co-organizers, Meryl, Thomas, Logan, Cameron. And again, big thank you to Aaron for the last minute help. You saved the day. Thank you. Our next A11yNYC meetup is Thursday, May 8th. Again, it's a Thursday once again. Usually these are Tuesdays, but next time it's Thursday again. It's going to be with Kai Wong and Asha Sachdeva from Teladoc Health's accessibility team. And then in June, June 3rd, we will have Irina Morozova, who you may know from, she often helps with the door and helps with volunteer stuff around here as well. She's going to be presenting on influencing without authority. That one is actually going to be really cool. It's that will be a pep talk for accessibility advocates, but it will actually be at Civic Hall. So it won't be in our usual space. It will be at Civic Hall in partnership with Verizon. They have an all-day ADA 35th anniversary celebration event happening at Civic Hall. If you're interested in learning more about that, let me know. But then they've graciously offered for us to use that space in the evening for the meetup. So that'll be June 3rd. Okay. Meryl posts written recaps of all of our events on the equalentry.com blog, so keep an eye out for that. And please, if you're interested again in heading up to Midtown afterwards, let me know. I'll probably head out a little after 9 after we finish kind of breaking things down, but we'll be meeting up with some folks from the Real Abilities Film Festival for a quick get together. So thanks a lot for everybody coming.
You guys want a selfie?
Yeah, why not? And then we will Flip and Lydia, thank you so much. Flip is frozen, so cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I don't really do this too often, but. Hey! You guys could be loud too.
1, 2, 3. Hey!
Yeah.
Wait, it was a video? No, it was a picture.
I could do a video.
No,
too.
don't worry about it. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Stick around if you're here in the room. Chat for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll head on out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.